I know what love is.
I love you. You complete me.
I may have never been kissed on Notting Hill, but I found a podcast to get my fill. Maybe I'm clueless, but this is good as it gets. Paige, Mikey, and Todd serving the best of my best friend's wedding. Rom-coms, true love, and heavy petting. We crying on the couch, but we're not forgetting that most of these flicks are trash. We relive it again, all romance in the podcast. You want it, you got it. You want it, 'cause baby, you got it.
As you wish.
Thank you for tuning into Romancing the Pod. You had us at hello. I'm Paige Wesley.
I'm Mikey Randolph.
And I'm Todd Schlosser. And this week, Paige made us watch
Tristan
and Isolde.
I had like a brain fart. I was like, what is this movie that we are watching?
We watched an old Britannia Legend movie.
Yeah.
I watched the trailer before I watched the movie because I rented it on Amazon.
Yeah.
And I was like, the trailer got me hyped. I mean, I was in it to win it. I was like, man. And then what's that band that was in the trailer? Do you guys know? Who was the girl? The girl rocks person that screams a lot, and then Bring Me to Life. She sings Bring Me to Life or whatever.
Evanescence.
That was the song on the trailer.
That's because this movie came out in 2006. That's why.
Yeah.
So you liked it, Mikey?
Funny. Yeah, I liked the fighting and stuff. It was I feel like for like a romantic movie, this is way more like masculine than like Romeo and Juliet and stuff like that.
There's a lot of battles in this. Yes, I agree with you. I feel the same way about Knight's Tale.
Yes.
Although Knight's Tale is a little more fun than this is.
I really like A Knight's Tale. We're going to do A Knight's Tale at some point because I love that movie. But I love this. Like when I realized that this was like a Scott production, like a Ridley Scott, Tony Scott production, I was like,
oh, is that what it was?
Yeah. I was like, oh, hell yeah. The Scotts are really good at not the Scots, the people. I mean, like the Scots that made the movie. They are really good at like historical epics. And when I realized the story was like historical and it was the Scots that were doing it, I was like, yeah, this is going to be awesome. I can't wait. And I honestly love this movie. I cried probably the last 30 minutes completely, just solid sobs, but it was great. Mikey, stop making that face.
I didn't really cry this time, but only because I've seen this movie so many times.
Sure, yeah. This was the first time I had seen it.
Like so many times.
I did not cry because I don't know. I didn't really feel it from what's his face?
Franco.
James Franco?
Mr. Franco, his teary-eyed dreaminess did not do it for me the whole time. Isolde sold it better.
That's true. That's because he hated this movie, hated working on this movie, hates this movie to this day, won't stop talking about how much he hates this movie.
That's so crazy. This is a great movie.
I think he's good.
It's an okay movie. I'll say it's okay. I like it too.
I really liked it.
So, should I talk about why? Well, I picked this movie for fun, but like my weird, like how I saw this movie the first time.
Isn't this one of your favorite romantic movies?
No, this is the first time I ever saw Henry Cavill.
Oh.
Yeah.
There you go.
So my history with this movie actually starts with a different romantic movie. We've talked about it a lot. Grew up in a Christian family, going to church, going to youth group, etc.
Yeah.
At the height of purity culture within the church.
Like where father-daughter dances were not considered super weird.
That kind of happened after my time, and it is weird.
No, it is.
Like,
yeah.
People got real strange with it.
Yeah.
I came of age during the True Love Waits concert era where they'd be like,
Same.
You want to see Reliant K? Sign this pledge. Like that's the era. that's the era I grew up in.
Yeah.
And rom-coms or romantic movies at the time were a little sterile as well. And we've covered a bunch of them on the show, but there's a lot of like, we're going to kiss and then fast forward, it's the next morning. And if there's one thing that girl youth group, small groups love to do is just watch romantic movies together and think about the day when they'll be married someday. And in 2004, so 2 years before this movie came out,
Right.
a movie came out that changed all of that. And that movie is The Notebook.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you remember The Notebook, but they stone cold in The Notebook.
And a bunch of female youth groups watch that movie every day for a year.
Yes, we did. Because there's that scene in the rain where they're like ripping each other's clothes off and he's like throwing her against the wall. It was nuts. And I cannot tell you how many times I sat through The Notebook with a group of other girls. And the problem is, in the midst, like that amazing sex scenes are in the middle of a very sad, boring movie. And so what happened is I went to a slumber party. My senior year of high school. I was 18.
Paige, say it slow.
Tell
baby. Say
me
it slow.
tell me everything.
Slow it down.
It's not a sexy story. And
Wait, how old were you guys?
I was 18.
18.
Oh,
She
okay.
said 18.
Nice. All right.
Yeah.
Wow.
How many girls were there?
Wow.
Like
Wow.
15.
Yes.
Oh.
But this is not a sexy story. I was one of the oldest because I am old for my grade.
I'm out. Mikey, if she's one of the oldest, that means most of them are underage. I'm out.
You know who's in? James Franco.
and Matthew Gates. Yeah.
Anyway, now some of the people I went to high school with listen to the show. So Michelle, I don't remember if you were at the slumber party, but if you were and you remember me making Ariel cry at Vanessa's house, let me know. I am not the hero of this story. So
Hey, Mikey, are you at all surprised to learn that Paige made another girl cry at a sleepover? Because that seems on brand for me.
I feel like
and here's what's terrible. It's exactly for the reason you think I would make somebody cry. I have not changed in the slightest as an adult.
I'm kind of like Paige. It's like, I made some girl cry in English class today. I just took it too far. I feel terrible.
So it wasn't me taking it too far. It definitely was me being overly critical of a film. Now, what happened was we're watching The Notebook. I have now seen The Notebook at this point, because it's like a year and a half after it came out, so fucking much.
Yeah.
So much. We're past the point of the sex scene, but we're watching all the way to the end of the movie, which, by the way, if you're watching The Notebook now and you've already seen the ending once, turn it off after the sex scenes are over. Why are you still watching it? I don't understand.
No, the murder-suicide at the end is the best part of the movie.
Well, see, that's the problem, is because I was like, are we really watching this to the end? This movie fucking sucks. Like, I'm complaining aloud to a group of girls. And one girl I didn't realize was in the very front and was sobbing. And at first I was like, has she not seen this? Like, I feel like she and I have watched this movie together before. Like why is she still crying? And she turned around and just goes, my grandparents have Alzheimer's. And I'm just like, and then the party just turns and everyone at the party is just like, Paige is an evil bitch. Just like, how dare she? Which, by the way, I didn't know. And also, karma's a bitch, because like 8 months later, my grandparents had Alzheimer's. That's what happens to grandparents.
So what I've learned is don't make fun of Alzheimer's.
What I did learn about The Notebook is like when you want your grandparents to like get back oriented, you just talk about that time they stone cold fucked in the rain.
I wrote you every day for a year. It's not over. It's never been over. The Notebook. Anyway.
I like that you felt the need to like say where it was from just in case you didn't know. We've been talking about The Notebook in our Tristan Isolde episode for 15 minutes already.
We are not going to do The Notebook yet because that is like our apex episode.
I know. That's episode 100 for sure.
I promise there's a point to this. I am going somewhere with it. So I ruined that party. And people, like literally, the movie ends. A bunch of people go off into a bedroom to like console her while she cries.
Yeah,
and like 2 or 3 people stay with me and they're like, you really shouldn't have been that mean because of her grandparents. And I'm like, how am I supposed to know about that? Anyway, I feel bad. So I, back at school, like the next week or whatever, go up to her and I'm like, hey, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. I didn't know. I shouldn't have been that harsh. Can I make it up to you? Let's all go out to a movie.
And what I thought was really mean is that you waited 2 minutes, came back up to her and said the exact same thing again.
Oh, no. No. Oh, no.
Oh, my God.
Oh,
Paige, you are cold-blooded.
You want to go see this movie Memento that just came out?
So this is happening in 2006. And in 2006, James Franco was kind of a big deal because he had just done the Spider-Man movies.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, let's get a group of people together. We'll all go see a movie. There's this new James Franco movie out. It'll be fun movie girl times, because I had no idea what Tristan Isolde was about, and that it was going to be equally sad as The Notebook. So by the time the day comes when we're all going to go to the movie, and I had offered to drive because I was 18 and had a car and a job and whatever, it's down to like just me and this girl. Like everyone else is like boned out. I think maybe one other person went with us, but I'm like, whatever. So we go to see Tristan and Isolde. We're watching the movie, and within like a couple minutes, I'm like, yeah, James Franco's cool or whatever, but like, who's his brunette friend? Because like, who's that though? Don't care about James Franco. And from that point on, I'm just like watching Henry Cavill in the movie, not really paying attention to the rest of the movie. I'm like laser focused. So then, spoiler alert, his character dies in this movie. And I was just like, oh shit. And then I like look down the aisle at the girl who's with me, who is again just sobbing, and turns to see me not sobbing, looking at her like I'm some sort of sociopath who doesn't feel things.
You're like, let me taste your tears.
And basically I just had to drive her back home in silence because I was the one who could drive. But this is pre-IMDb, so I had like, other than sitting through the credits or whatever, I didn't know who he was. I couldn't like find his name or anything till 6 months later when I'm in college at the sorority house. One of my sorority sisters, who was a senior and a film major also, was working for Tony Scott at the time.
Oh my God.
Yes. And so we're sitting in the sorority house, and James Franco comes up because he was still very popular at the time. And I'm like, unpopular opinion. Did anyone see Tristan and Isolde 6 months ago? Fuck James Franco. Who's his brunette friend? And she was like, his name is Henry Cavill. He was in the office the other day. We're trying to cast him in a thing. And I was just like, what? Oh my God. She has the information I need. Because this was pre-Tudors. And so they were like trying to cast him and stuff because Tudors was coming out. Yeah. And that's how I learned who Henry Cavill was and made a girl cry twice.
Nice.
It's a shame Henry Cavill's career never took off after this movie.
Well, there was a point where he tried to get cast in like a bunch of different stuff, and he was always like the very next in line.
Yeah.
So Variety actually at one point wrote an article about like, he's the guy that everyone should know but doesn't because he's never been in anything.
Wow,
and then he immediately got Superman like right after that. Because he was almost James Bond twice. And then he was almost like 3 or 4 other things that either fell through or went to other people. And now he's in everything, but
he's a good actor.
He's an okay actor.
I think he's good. Like, I don't know. I mean, you're right. I do forgive a lot because he's got broad shoulders and a pretty face. But, like, he could do whatever he wants, and I'm on board because that dude's great. But, hey, do you guys maybe want to talk about Tristan and Isolde and, like, as a movie instead of just, like, who the hot people in it are?
Who's Isolde? I was, like, down.
That's Sophia something or other. She's been in a bunch of stuff.
Sophia Miles.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's been in a bunch of stuff.
Okay.
I think she's really good in this.
This is all her fault for lying about her name. And I just want to throw that out there at the beginning.
Watching through this now as an adult, I'm like, if one fucking person had just told the truth, this would not be a thing.
Yeah. But I mean, you have to understand why she didn't tell the truth, and that's because it could have gotten them both killed while she was nursing him back to health.
Sure.
Like, I get it.
Yeah, but like she should have told him when he was getting on the boat, like, my name is Isolde, don't forget me. Blah,
Agreed.
and I'm sorry I didn't tell you for real, but I love you. Bye.
Yeah.
Or when they got back from the tournament, they could have just been like, hey, dude.
We fucked.
Well, he could have also told people what happened to him. Because that's the other thing. He's just like, I'm back from the dead and doesn't tell anybody. And it's like, if any of you had stopped to be like, this is what happened, like, a couple weeks ago, this movie wouldn't happen.
Okay, wait. Let's talk about that. Because that is like if we straight up buried Todd at a funeral.
Why does it have to be me?
And then we recorded like 2 weeks later. They're like, Todd's
With
like,
the truck as our new co-host.
yeah.
You just hear various kinds of honks in agreement, disagreement, or like laughs.
And then, like, Todd just logs in on Zoom like 3 weeks later. He's like, I'm back from the dead.
What happened to you? None of your business.
Yeah.
That's what happened to me.
At that point, I'm like, Todd is either a zombie or a Terminator, and we should run.
The most unbelievable part about this movie is that they didn't and burn him at the stake immediately.
For being a witch, yes.
I don't think they were Christian yet. I don't think that was. Weren't they still pagan at this time? Actually, it's after the Romans pulled out. They may very well have been Christian.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what religion you are. If you're dead and you come back, whatever culture is probably going to murder you.
Torch it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and they tried to torch him on that boat. That doesn't burn him alive, which doesn't make any sense to me.
My thinking was that it's not a long enough trip on the water for it to fully burn.
No, we see him on the water and the moss or whatever had burnt out and he was just floating in a boat. And I was like, the boat is made of wood. Wood burns. This is ridiculous.
It could have rained or something. It rains a lot.
Maybe that's
over there.
okay.
It could have rained, or it's also on the water. So like high probability that it's not gonna fully burn just because it's on water.
Yeah.
Well, and my thinking is it's too short of a trip so that before it has a chance to fully catch on fire and burn him, he hits the sandbar of the other shore and it tips.
Is that how close they were?
Yeah, dude, it's just England and Ireland, man. They're not that far apart. And multiple times in this movie, we see people row by hand, and it only takes them a day or so.
The narrowest part of the strait between these areas on either side is about 13 miles. So apparently there's like a strait or like a channel, whatever you call that in nautical terms, that they're only like 11 miles apart or 13 miles apart. So that actually sort of makes sense because you could row. I mean, that would take a while, especially through like the waves of the ocean. But like you could do that in a day for sure. You wouldn't want to, but you could.
You wouldn't want to, but you could, because we see multiple people do that in this movie, just like back and forth.
Absolutely. So maybe we should just get into this movie and talk about it as we run through it.
Let's do it. So we open on title cards that give us kind of some backstory as to when this is taking place. And it's basically Britain in the Dark Ages after the Roman Empire, and that it's kind of divided among feuding tribes. But to the west, Ireland has kind of flourished and built up a kingdom because they were untouched by the Romans because of the sea separating them from the other island. And their king is kind of ruthless and wanting to take over what will become England. And because he wants to exert will over them, he doesn't want them to unite, because if they did, they'd be able to overpower him.
Yeah. And they do sort of make a point to point out that Ireland is unified. They have one king.
Right.
And that England, or what will become England, is a bunch of like different tribes, or you might call them petty kingdoms. They're like very small
nation states.
Yeah, like sort of nation states that eventually come together to form England in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, and there's only like 20 people in Cornwall, so I can't imagine there's only about 100 people in England at this point.
I mean, there's way more than that, even what we see in this movie. But I feel you, sure.
When they zoom out on like it's the rebuilt Cornwall with the stone, I was like, that's still like real shitty.
Honestly, okay, so no joke. Yesterday, I went to the Ren Fair. I actually ran into Kate. Yeah. She's one of the mods in the Horror Virgin community. She was at the Ren Fair yesterday.
The head mod.
Yeah.
Why don't you like show some respect?
Put some respect on her name.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Kate. Please forgive me. So I ran into her at the Ren Fair. We literally watched jousting together, and then I come back and I watched this movie, and I was like, these are two wildly different, quote unquote, medieval time periods.
Well, this isn't medieval. This is before that. This is the Dark Ages.
This is pre-evil.
So we see some really gorgeous landscapes. Yes. I will say this movie is shot beautifully.
It is, yeah.
For what it is, there's some beautiful landscapes. There's some beautiful costumes. Money and thought was put into this movie that turns out only okay. But we see young Tristan hunting a bunny with his dad.
Which this actor who plays young Tristan has appeared on the podcast before in Love Actually. Yeah. It's Liam Neeson's quote-unquote son in Love Actually.
Well, and Rufus Sewell as well, although I would say is much more likable in this film.
Much more likable,
He's also in Knight's Tale.
Yes, well, he's a bad guy in Knight's Tale.
He is. This is probably my favorite role he's ever done, because this movie does something really unique in that we are dealing with a case of infidelity, except the person being cheated on is really nice.
Yeah.
And like, they really drive it home of like, he's not a bad guy. Yeah. We're not going to vilify him to make this feel okay. You should feel bad about this.
Yeah, and you do.
I appreciated it.
So we cut to Tristan and his father go back to the main keep in Aragon is their kingdom.
Yeah.
It's Castle Tantalon is what their castle's called. And on their way to the castle, his dad basically tells him in the market, if you go home without something for your lady, you'll have hell to pay. And so he goes and gets flowers and makes a little flower bracelet for his mom, and that's going to come back later. But
Right.
so as they get back to the keep, we find out that the other tribes have arrived. So they're basically coming to a meeting of all the different tribes of England to try and unify. They allow Tristan to kind of sit with them in the Great Hall and cook his rabbit and kind of listen to the meeting that they're having. And this is where we find out that if they were a united England, they would outnumber the Irish 2-1 and easily defeat them.
Yeah.
And they basically present a treaty, and the treaty would have Lord Mark, aka Rufus Sewell, rule over everybody because he has kind of the largest kingdom, it seems.
And he's like cool. He's very cool. He's very cool.
He's pretty cool, yeah. And there is a, how do I want to put, not everyone agrees, specifically Lord Wictred, played by Mark Strong, who, this is one of the only times he's been a bad guy, this and Sunshine. Other than that, you know, he's always awesome in films for the most part.
I love him in The Kingsman.
I do too. I love Kingsman.
And spoiler alert, when he doesn't make it through the end of one film, I was very sad about that.
I was so sad.
When he starts singing Country Road,
Yep.
oh my God, he's a great actor. He's great. And he's honestly
Yeah.
great in this. He's a great bad guy.
He's got terrible wig in this, but other than that, he's great.
That's true. He's a very bald man.
Yeah.
But he does a great job in this movie.
He's a good villain, and he, I think, has very realistic villain motivations in that he wants to rule, but he is unpopular and no one likes him, and so the only way he can get ahead is kind of by trickery and dissension.
Yeah.
And that seemed very realistic to me.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Absolutely.
So as they're having this meeting, we find out that the Irish are there. They have entered the chat and they're going to burn everything down.
Yeah, like in what would be like ghillie suits of the day. Like they're in brush suits and they're like sneaking onto, I almost said campus. They're sneaking onto the castle like to murder everybody more or less. Because I mean, it's not the Kingdom of England yet, but you have all of the leadership of England, even though they're broken into factions, in one place. That would be the ideal place to attack.
Yeah, I mean, it would be as if like you had the president, vice president, secretary of state, the whole cabinet in one place and you bombed it. Like that's basically what they're doing.
Or it would be like you had every state governor in D.C., but we had no federal government. We were just a bunch of states and all the governors were in one location to build a government, right? That's sort of what they're doing there, but it's before they actually are able to make a government.
Right.
Largely because Wictred set them up.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll find out later that he continues to work with Ireland the whole time.
Yes.
But Wictred gave it away. Wictred is the reason this attack happens. And we basically see in that little great hall where Tristan's dad is desperately trying to protect women and children. But Tristan wants to fight because he's young and scrappy. And his dad...
and also his personality trait is aggression.
Yeah, that is his only personality trait is me like fighting, me boy with sword. So his dad goes to put him in a trap door, and as he's checking on him and closing it, he turns and is stabbed.
He legit gets his dad slashed in the face to death.
Yep.
Yeah.
And his dad's dead body falls on top of the trap door and bleeds through it. So he like feels the blood on his hands. It's really sad.
Yeah.
And his dad's last words were, "It was your fault."
It was his fault, though.
So he climbs out a few minutes later. The room is on fire. His mother is also dead, still wearing the bracelet he made her.
Yeah.
Lord Mark is still alive, just in time to see one of the Irish run to try and kill Tristan. He puts his hand out and he loses that hand, but Tristan survives and he manages to kill that Irish guy. But what he sees as he does is that his own pregnant wife
Lord Mark's pregnant wife.
now also dead.
Yeah. I did think it was like crazy that he pushed him just at the right time when the blade came down and cut off his left hand.
Right hand.
All I know is because he's got like a stump for a while, and then later in the movie he has what looks very similar to like Chubbs' hand in Happy Gilmore.
It does.
But it's iron.
Yeah.
But it's iron, and he like takes it off and sets it on tables and stuff.
Yeah.
And you're just like, Chubbs, they took your hand.
But it shows that Lord Mark is he did not want a child to be murdered and like put himself in harm's way to save him. So you're rooting for Lord Mark from the go.
He is a good guy. The whole movie, he's a good guy.
The whole movie, he's a good guy. So meanwhile, over in Ireland at the castle, they're having a funeral for the Irish queen. Isolde is her daughter, the princess, and she's following her mother's funeral procession as they load her body onto the funeral pyre. And her nurse, who will be with her for the rest of the movie, essentially, as her handler, comforts her. But as they're at the funeral, the army returns, and her dad, the king, leaves the funeral to meet with his soldiers to be like, what's up with the treaty? And they're like, oh, we killed those fools. And he's like, good. And tears the treaty up.
Yeah, not only did they kill them, they took the paper that they were going to sign as a treaty, and then the Irish king tore it up. I was like, that's like a power move. Like, kill them all and then take the piece of paper and bring it to me. Like, I thought that was both insane and awesome.
Yep. Isolde puts her mother's ashes in like a little, I guess a gravestone is, I guess, what you would call it.
It looked more like an altar to me because she wasn't buried there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it more or less is just a place that she can go to honor her mom, which I thought was super sweet.
Right.
And we see her as she ages and and Sophia takes over.
She goes back there,
She's like leaning against it, sitting there. I thought that was really sweet, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But it serves the same purpose as like a gravestone would in like a traditional cemetery. It's a place where you can go honor that person and, connect to that person. It's great.
Yep. And she asks why she had to die, and her nurse is like, she got sick. It was a fever. Sorry.
Because we're like in the dark ages and like you could stub your toe and die at any time.
Like she was full of evil blood. So
yeah, her humors were out of balance.
She does say it was an ill vapor that took her.
Yeah.
So
like a bad pod?
No, like a bad fart. And you're just like, that vapor is deadly. And then
silent but
deadly. That's where it comes from. That's where silent but deadly comes from. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you hear that? No.
And then Isolde's like, no, it was her heart. Because this is Isolde, even as a child, being like, Dad's an asshole.
Yeah. I hope that doesn't make me have daddy issues later on.
Oh, it definitely will. So meanwhile, back in Cornwall in England, Tristan and Lord Mark go home to Lord Mark's castle, and they return to find out that on their way back to Ireland, the Irish raided their village. Basically, the Irish raided everyone's village while they were at the meeting.
Yeah.
And kill everybody at the meeting.
I bet they didn't raid Wicktred's.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not. Mm-hmm.
But they return to find that the Irish have raided their village, and Lord Mark's sister is still alive, but her husband is dead.
Yeah.
And they've essentially killed off all of the young men in the village. And she says that the executions lasted a whole day, and they basically killed an entire generation of men, leaving only children alive, essentially. So they take Tristan in because...
Who is one of those kids, Paige? Who's one of the kids they leave alive?
They leave what will become Henry Cavill alive,
right.
But it's Lord Mark's nephew.
Yeah, his sister's son.
Yeah, who is the same age as Tristan.
Yeah.
So basically, his sister's like, well, I already got one. How much harder is two? And so they kind of toss Tristan in with the rest of the kids that have survived, and they try to teach the kids to fight. So they basically raise a generation of soldiers.
Yeah. They're like, time for your education. We need murder death camp now. So you need to do really well in murder death camp.
That is the education you needed at that time. That would probably be like going to school on some level.
Yeah.
For a well-to-do child who was going to be leading battles.
Yeah.
That's like why they taught chess. That's like why all of that stuff was important back then.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And Tristan is not necessarily fitting in immediately, and Mello is making fun of him a lot.
Yeah.
Mello's kind of an asshole as a child, so Mello is kind of a dick to Tristan at first.
Yeah, he's not very mellow.
He's not very mellow.
I liked it.
He makes fun of Tristan because Tristan doesn't want to fight. He's kind of scared and sheepish, which understandably, he's been through a lot of trauma.
I don't think he's scared or sheepish. I think he's just like, I don't know. A lot of people around me have died. I don't really want to continue that cycle or whatever. Maybe not. But like,
I feel like trauma-informed education policies didn't come into effect for like 4,000 more years or whatever.
I think the other thing to remember is Mello is dealing with trauma too.
Yeah.
He just watched his father and likely older brothers get assassinated, basically get murdered. So he also is dealing with some shit, and I think it's kids acting out because they've seen a lot of death.
Yeah. But they're acting out in different ways. Like, I get that.
They're also training to kill people. So, you know, very triggering.
Yes.
Right, and so he pushes Tristan and calls him a coward, and then Tristan pulls a Mikey and beats up like 4 kids.
He's like, no, Mello, you're yellow.
Oh.
Hell yeah. But all this is really showing is that Tristan is an amazing fighter, even at a young age, but like doesn't want to and is sort of like he wants to focus on other pursuits, I guess.
Right. We cut to 9 years later where baby Tristan is now James Franco.
Yeah.
And his 2 friends, Mello and
Yellow.
Simon, who I think we lose in like the next 5 minutes.
Yeah, we lose him in the first battle against the Irish soldiers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mello and Simon come running up and they're like, you're going to love this. We found a trapdoor. And this is the first place where we see grimy teenage Henry Cavill. I think he's like 19 or something in this movie, and chef's kiss.
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh.
And if you compare this to like Count of Monte Cristo to this.
Yeah.
He's around the same age, right?
Count of Monte Cristo is a couple years before this, and it's one of his first movies ever.
Yeah, but if you look at him, you're like, this dude could be dreamy. And then in this, you're like, oh, he's well on his way to dreamy. And then like if you look at him in The Witcher, you're like, oh, good Lord.
Well, I mean, that's why when Witcher came out and people were just like, oh my God, dirty, long-haired battle Henry Cavill is the best Henry Cavill. I'm like, I've been knowing about grimy Henry Cavill for years.
Yeah,
Like,
since T&I, baby.
since T&I. My personal favorite Cavill for a while was Tudor Season 2.
Oh, yeah.
Where he's got kind of the closer beard, he's got curly hair, and which is like his natural curl, and he hadn't gotten crazy in shape yet, so he's got like a rugby body.
Oof.
Oof magoof. And then my next like close second is Mission Impossible Henry Cavill.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
so hot young Henry Cavill, decent James Franco, and other dude that's gonna die soon.
Yeah.
Find an underground tunnel that basically takes them from the forest outside the castle to the base of the castle keep.
Yeah, it's like old Roman ruins. They talk about it as they're going down through it.
It's crazy
Yeah.
to me that the Roman Empire was so like impressive and huge this far beyond the rest. Like the Dark Ages is such a crazy time
It is a crazy time.
of like the Romans had like colonized everything and put technology there and built all these castles. And then like they just like, you know, they collapse and all these people are like, we're in the Stone Ages again.
Yeah, it is very much like that.
We're in the Stone Ages, but we got all these old buildings that so
Right.
there's like a lot of castles have like Roman foundations, and there's a Roman bridge that we talk about
Yeah.
a lot in this movie, and another set of ruins near the castle. So like there's a lot of it around.
Yeah, the one that they meet up at later is more like a villa, not like a castle,
Yeah.
but like it's like a house, right?
Yeah. But Tristan asks who else knows about this tunnel, and they're like, nobody. And he's like, good.
Perfect.
Keep it that way. It's our secret tunnel, boys. Yeah.
I never show the boys my secret tunnel.
That's why you're not popular. We cut back to Ireland, where they find out that Cornwall has rebuilt, and this time they've rebuilt the castle in stone. And
They're pulling a real like Three Little Pigs kind of thing on Ireland.
Yeah,
you know?
they are.
they are. And Ireland at this point is like, okay, next time we go over there for their tribute to us as king, we want
gonna huff.
slaves.
We're gonna puff.
And we're going to blow young Henry Cavill. So they're going to take another generation of young people, basically.
Yes, as slaves.
As slaves, and
Yeah.
prevents them from building up their army and having more kids, because these are like prime fighting and childbearing age people. So meanwhile, Isolde is at her mother's grave, and her nurse comes to meet her and is like, hey, it's dark in an hour. And this is where we kind of find out that Isolde is a little like Little Mermaid, where she's just like, I want to be where the people are. I want to be somewhere that's not Ireland. And she wants to go.
I want to be where the English are. I want to be banging Franco. Absolutely.
And her nurse is kind of like, no, everything over there is dark and bad and evil. And she's just like, yeah, probably not though. Like, it's probably just other people.
Oh, okay. Do you guys think James Franco looks like Meeker the Muppet throughout this film with his haircut?
I didn't until you said that, and then absolutely yes.
Now I can't unsee it. I'm sure that probably is his hair, and it's how everyone's hair looks right now coming out of quarantine.
Yeah.
Like all of our friends have that haircut, but it looks like a bad wig.
It does.
And I don't think it was. I think it was just styled weird because it looks like his hair has no real part. It's just all coming from a central point at the top of his head into a weird curly bowl.
Yeah. It looks like a chia pet.
Yeah.
Everyone else's hair looks pretty boss in this movie. Like Sophia Myles' hair is gorgeous.
It
It's
is.
just that long curl. There's a lot of like cool braids and all kinds of stuff. And he's next to Henry Cavill a lot, who has what I would call like pre-Witcher hair.
Oh, yeah.
Like the Witcher before he went gray. And it's also this kind of like sweaty, dirty, like you look at him and you're like, that's the guy. Or at least I was. Maybe this is just me.
No, I got it.
It's fine.
James Franco's character never wore a helmet in the movie because his hair, he just couldn't fit it on his
It
head.
was totally fine, yeah.
Yeah.
So back in Ireland, we find out that Isolde is going to be betrothed to her dad's top general, who is Creepy Creeps.
Yeah. He's not a handsome guy. He's just a big, powerful man who has a interesting looking sword.
What's wrong with that?
I didn't say a big sword, mind you. It's interesting looking, Mikey.
Powerful. You said powerful.
This man is built like a Duplo toy. Like,
What's wrong with that?
He is not a soft 10, Mikey. He's like a hard 4.
he's a square that somehow has arms.
No, I like this conversation. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, but
Mikey, no one is attacking you, and you don't look anything like this guy.
I have the body type of a rectangle.
This guy looks like if you took Juggernaut from the X-Men movies of this time,
Yeah.
and instead of having like a helmet and stuff on, it was just human. That's this dude.
Yes, yeah.
He has no neck.
Oh, what is wrong with that?
You don't look like this guy,
You
Mikey.
don't.
Anyway, I like this guy because he's like, hey, your dad has promised you, and also like, I poisoned my sword.
You know what that means, ladies.
And I was like, that's his big line with her.
I mean, this is like 400 AD. I don't really think flirting was something that was like people were good at yet. Like they had,
Ask Tristan.
he hadn't read I Hope They Serve Meat in Hell. So he didn't know how to hit on a girl.
I'd say he's not flirting at this point. I have always interpreted this as him threatening her.
Oh, yes.
Where
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, in all fairness, Paige, and this is not a good take, she's property in this time. And
yes,
her dad has just said, not yet, but I will shortly be giving my daughter to you. And it seems like an ownership transaction, which is not uncommon for this time period.
Yeah.
And it's horrible, but like he's treating her like she is soon to be his property.
Well, and I think that's part of why it's pretty smart the way they handle Lord Mark
Yeah.
in this movie, who also receives her as property. Like that is still a thing. But the way he treats her is so much different.
Yeah. He's like a genuine good dude.
Yeah.
I'm like really nice to my couch. What does that mean?
Mikey, I'm afraid you're going to split that sectional in half.
Oh my God.
I know too much about your life.
Yeah.
You no-neck having poison sword motherfucker.
You want to see my poison sword, ladies?
Ladies.
You wanted to see just the tip of the sword?
Honestly, the tip of his sword is like very strange. It's like curved backwards.
Yeah, some people
Ladies.
like that.
Your boxer briefs are too tight if that's happening. That's what causes that.
Anyway, so she's not digging it. He's like, I'm going off to battle, but when I come back, I'm gonna wreck that. And you're just like, oh no.
Well, I mean, okay, so the creepiest part was when they're talking about like the poison he poisons his sword with, and she's like, oh, I know the cure for that. And he goes, do you know the cure for this? And it's like the medieval equivalent of like
Viagra.
Cialis or Viagra or something.
He's like, it makes your heart on harder. And she's like,
It makes a hard man harder, and the only cure is wild abandon.
Yeah.
It's like,
And he
oh,
back of the
no.
hand strokes her face. Like back of the hand stroke face is never a good move. It's always creepy.
I am going to use Wild Abandon as a pickup line very soon.
And that's a guarantee, ladies.
You want to go out Thursday night? We're going to go out wildly abandoned. God dang it.
Mikey, I think you and I should start a discotheque called Wild Abandon.
But with Wild WYLD. I was thinking Bill and Ted. But
Wild Abandon! Yeah, I like it.
Mikey, I think the pickup line that you should use is like, hey girl, if you play your cards right, I'll let you see my neck.
Step back for the dick neck.
So the Irish arrive in England, specifically in Cornwall, to try and pillage the village. And they start taking teenagers, and they get one, and basically they send to find Tristan, and he gets there just as they're hanging that teenager.
Yeah.
And they can't stop it. It's too late. And they basically are like, whoever else tries to stop us, we're killing you too. We don't care.
When they zoom out from that scene, there's a pig hanging right next to it. I was like, did that pig try and stop it?
I don't trust him.
I was like, really? The only one that tried to stop him was a pig? You guys are heartless.
Hey, that pig knocked up the farmer's daughter. I think they hung that kid in the butcher area.
Oh, that's what Natalie explained to me. Yes, absolutely. They hung it in the butcher area. Yeah.
I do think it's funnier to be like, that pig was charged with murder.
They fried him at the stake and then like rotated him slowly over it.
Some pig. We cut to Lord Mark and Tristan are arguing about what they're going to have to do, because they've now taken a cart of teenagers away.
Yeah.
And they're on the road back to their ship.
It's actually a few carts. It's like 2 or 3 carts.
Yeah, we see the one main one when they go to free them, but yeah, they've basically loaded up all the teens.
Yeah.
It was basically like if you go to the movies, it's like the amount of teens talking while you're at the movie behind you.
Oh, yeah.
Well, so Mikey, when you watched this movie, you were like, man, I wish I could put teens in carts.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Lord Mark is like, figure out how to do this in a way that doesn't kill us, because we are outnumbered, basically.
Because they're still like in their tribes, right? They haven't unified under England yet.
Right. So Tristan is like, okay, I need the 2 fastest runners, which is Mello and Simon.
Right.
And they basically run up on them, shoot at them, and then run away. Because their whole job is to try and draw the Irish away from the cart and everything. So they take off running, they run through a clearing, and then as they do, the rest of the army pops out of that clearing and ambushes the small amount of scouts that they've sent. So then they put their clothes on and ride back to the cart.
Right. And they're like hiding that it's not the people who were chasing after Mello and Simon, right? So it looks like it's just the search party or the scouts that went after them. But when they get there, this was insane to me. I did not understand this at all. But people had been hiding around them in the woods. They popped up.
Yeah. I have no idea how that happened.
So they had been there for like an hour and 30 minutes at least, just like hanging out under dirt, waiting for Mello and Tristan and Simon to get back on the horses.
Right.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's crazy. So a fight ensues. Simon is kind of shooting for cover as Tristan kills people, but Simon gets killed.
Okay, I really like Simon's character a lot, even though he's not in it very long, because he's one of the 3 friends, right? And you very clearly see him decide. He's got 2 arrows. He can shoot it to stop. And it's, I don't know, the general for the Irish side. I forget his name.
Right.
He's like stabbing kids on the cart, right?
He's trying to stab them through the cart.
So Simon's trying to stop him. He has 2 arrows left, and there are 2 guys running at him. And he decides to...
No, he said, I want you to stab them in the heart on the cart.
So Simon has a choice of killing the 2 guys running at him or trying to stop the Irish general from killing the kids in the cart. And he chooses to shoot him, although he doesn't kill him, but he shoots him in the arm and I think in the leg, and then he dies. Like he gets stabbed by those 2 guys running after him. I thought it was like a really selfless sort of, oh, that's awesome. Good for you. That's really sad, though.
Yeah. And in the meantime, Tristan ends up, after seeing what happens, he jumps and stabs the guy that's trying to stab the kids in the cart. but in the process, he gets sliced with the poisoned sword. He does finally stab the guy and steal his sword and then kill him with his own sword.
Yeah.
But by the time he does that, Simon is dying on the floor of the forest, and then Tristan collapses. He can't feel his arms or his legs.
Yeah.
They realize the sword has been poisoned, and so they're going to have to basically build two boats. They're both dead.
I mean, he's slowly dying, and they're complaining about building two boats instead of one. It was like real uncouth. You know what I'm saying?
Can you at least wait till I'm dead to like argue over who's gonna make the boat?
Well, and this is where Mello basically says he'll have a king's service, because he would have been a king had his kingdom not been destroyed as a child.
Yes.
So they float the boats out into the sea. They send him carrying the sword that killed him, and then archers on the cliff shoot fire arrows into the boat as they float out to sea, kind of AKA Viking funeral, but not really a Viking funeral. It's the stereotypic Viking funeral.
Yeah, it's like the Viking funeral you'd see in like video games or movies, but yeah.
Right. Not the real one.
I mean, I'm sure people did that, but it's not specifically Viking.
Right. Meanwhile, back on the shore, after they've sent the boats, Mello is now in charge, and he makes that one general kneel, and he's basically like, hey, when your people came to my village when I was a kid, you spared 12 out of 100, and I am even less kind. You and 3.
Yeah, so your leader and 3 others.
Yep, and the rest of you, dead.
Yep, they literally hacked them to pieces on the beach.
Yep, cut to, he gets back to the castle, and he has to break the word to Lord Mark about Tristan and Simon, and Lord Mark is devastated, because Tristan was like a son to him, essentially.
Yeah.
We cut to back in Ireland. Isolde wakes up and she's trying to run away because she does not want to marry Morhold, the creepy guy with no neck. And as they're running along the beach, her and her nurse, they find a boat. She runs over to the boat, and it turns out that it is Tristan's boat with his body still inside it, and he still has a pulse. So they drag him up the shore to her. She has like a little medicine shack thing on the shore.
It's like built into the, like where the beach meets like.
Yeah, it's like a little cave of like witchy business.
Yeah.
But she takes him into the cave. They're trying to get a fire going, but it's not fast enough. So she and her nurse take off all their clothes to keep him warm.
Yeah, and it's probably not James Franco's first threesome at this point.
I mean, as an actor, probably not.
I did like that the nurse was like, I haven't been naked with a man in like 15 years.
Yeah, so James Franco wakes up in a cold sweat, and they tell him like, hey, you're in Ireland, but you are safe. Nobody knows. Just sleep. And he wakes up again as she and the nurse come back, and he's starting to kind of wake up and remember things, and they're starting to put medicine on his wound. And this is just in my notes. I don't know why this was making me laugh so hard last night. It's not funny, but I did put it in my notes a bunch. It looks like she's making pesto. She's just like grinding up leaves, and then like every time she goes to rub paste and stuff on him, it kind of looks like pesto. So in my mind, I kept laughing about like, what if it was pesto? What if she's just like, sleep, my little garlicky baby.
Soon you will be ready for the stew. Yeah.
You're the biggest knot of all.
He's the naughty.
Oh.
Nailed it.
So they get him more clothes, and they basically tell him that the ocean's outside if you want to take a bath.
Which is like, the beach is outside.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to jump into salt water with your open wound, but yeah, go ahead and try that one.
But also, you smell real bad because this is like 420 AD.
Nice. Blaze
and
it.
you smell like ball sack and sweat.
Yeah, ball sack and more ball sack.
And pesto.
You smell like we've been rubbing pesto all over you for days.
Delicious.
Well, look, guys, don't make fun of people who rub pesto over their balls.
Mikey's been marinating ladies.
That's a spicy meatball.
That's a spicy pesto ball sack.
It's me, a pesto balls. I'm here to take you out.
I mean, most pesto recipes require nuts, so.
Don't ignore the nuts, ladies, in your pesto recipes. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I'm a pistachio.
wow. Guys, thousands of people listen to this.
Hey, that's their problem.
So Isolde goes back to the castle with her nurse, and her father comes to check on her, and he's just like, where you been? And she's just like, a convent. And he's like, you won't need it because you're going to get married. And she's like, oh yeah, where is that guy? And he's like, overdue, but he'll be back soon. And then leaves her. It's like the weirdest conversation.
I do love that Paige just reenacted the scene like it was a 1990s like fight between a father and a daughter. Oh, yeah? Well, where is he? He's supposed to be back. Yeah, he is overdue, but he'll be back and then you're his property.
Yeah. You'll be back, and then he's got a poison sword with your name on it. So she sneaks back out to the beach, to the shack on the seashore.
Oh, and this is when she sees him bathing in the ocean.
Yeah. And she doesn't tell him her real name, but they start to kind of like get to know each other and have like a friendship and hang out and stuff.
I mean, this is where they start to fall in love. You could say it.
Yeah. Her nurse clearly sees what's up and what's going to happen. And so she's just like, you should leave though. Like, as soon as you can leave, you should leave.
And it's the nurse who's like, don't tell him your real name because that could be bad for you later on. And she's right. I feel like she's right at that point.
Yeah. So as he's kind of telling her about himself, she sorry, I don't know why it's so stupid, and she spreads pesto on his chest is what my notes
She spreads the pesto on the chesto.
More pesto. She's just like finger painting his abs with pesto.
Yeah.
And then
I do think it's cute that the more and more she falls in love with him, the lower and lower she gets.
Yeah, she like pestos all the way down that happy trail. I was like, he didn't get sliced there, hun. I mean, he's cut, but he didn't get sliced. Anyway, so the next day she comes back and he's making her a seashell bracelet, kind of like the flower bracelet he made his mom. And they have a real kind of deep conversation of like duty over a life well lived. Yeah, duty over love.
Yeah.
And this is where she basically reveals her nurse more reveals it, that she is betrothed. And so that's what she's talking about, trying to escape. And she kind of is like, this can't be because that guy's going to come back and kill you. And she tells him like, you should leave soon, and takes him back to the shack. She goes to leave. He follows her outside. They kiss, and then they get down back in that shack.
Yeah.
The love shack.
He was like, you need to back that shack up.
Well, fine, Irish lady, won't you back that shack up? So that night, she sneaks home and hugs her nurse. Like, that's not a total giveaway for what happens. She just like walks in all dreamy, like, hello, hugs. And it's like, you just got banged out, didn't you? Meanwhile, somebody finds the remains of Tristan's boat on the beach, including the sword. And the same day, the last few men that Mello let live return.
Yeah.
And they have to race out to Tristan to try and get him out to sea before the king finds him. Because now they're looking to find out who killed their best men.
Yeah, and they know that has to have been an English boat because none of them came back on real boats.
Right.
Yeah.
And they get Tristan out to sea. He asks Isolde to come with him, and she's like, I can't, but I want to know that you make it, so please just go.
I really thought what she said was sweet. I don't know it verbatim, but it was something like, I want to live in a world where I know that you think about me often.
Yes.
And I can't have that world if you're dead.
We've all had that talk.
I thought your talks were like, this was fun, but my dog has an early work meeting.
So he climbs in the boat and rows towards England. Meanwhile, she goes back to the castle where her father's like, hey, there might be an English guy on the shore. Keep an eye out because he killed your betrothed. And she's just like, oh no.
I do love that she doesn't care at all. Like, it's pretty clear she doesn't care. And then her dad's like, wow, she's really sad about this. And then the other guy's like, yeah, she seemed very sad. I was like, no, she didn't. She seemed sort of happy about it.
Yeah. Well, they're like stunned. And I'm like, you could call it that. I would call it smiling.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. They're like, oh, grief, it comes out in like different ways for different people. Like some people just don't show it publicly. I'm sure she's going back to cry for weeks. She's super sad about
so many weeks.
Yeah.
All the necks she could have seen. I do like we get a shot of Tristan making his way across the ocean. And at one point, he's now fashioned a sail, and it's almost like a speedboat.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, clearly they put a motor Like they built a boat that looked old-timey and put a motor in it because he's moving way too fast. Like an old-timey speedboat. Meanwhile, the Irish decide that they're going to play a trick on everyone else where they're like, we're going to try and get them all to fight with each other, and we can do it by having them fight for Isolde's hand and this one little parcel of land that we don't care about. So we're going to invite everybody to a tournament. Whoever gets this land gets her hand in marriage. So they deliver the message about the tournament. Lord Mark sees it and is like, this is ridiculous. And Mello is the one who's like, well, people will see through it. But as they're talking about it, Tristan comes back.
Yeah.
He's like, I have been resurrected. Bow before me, peasants.
Yeah.
You know what? I've been to hell and back, and you can't say I didn't.
Honestly, I would have taken the time it took me to row across the channel and then steal a horse from somebody because he's on a horse for some reason.
Right.
And then I would have taken that time to come up with like the most badass, like underworld type story.
Yeah.
Like I was fighting Hades and I killed him and then I came back from the dead.
But like, even the truth is not, he's like, I was almost dead in Ireland and I dicked down a really hot Irish girl who brought me back to health.
Yes!
And I sailed back. What up, boys? Spring break!
I do not know why he doesn't just tell everyone the truth.
Because they wouldn't have believed him. They'd have been like, whatever, you fought Hades, shut up. Like,
Here's the thing. I think they would have. Like, I feel like it's an implausible story, but it's not an impossible story. And he could have leveraged it with like, hey, I know what the Irish coast is now.
Yeah.
Like, so I can help.
Biblically.
But he doesn't tell anybody. Biblically. But so the town is all freaking out because Tristan's back. Back in the castle, Mello is like, let me fight in this tournament for you. And essentially Lord Mark is like, no, I can't lose you also.
yeah.
And as they walk outside, they see that Tristan's back and they say, and Mello says, I saw you dead. And he just says, I am delivered, which you're just like, that's not a story.
Well, what you didn't see is Mello just said, I am DiGiorno. Or Desjardins or whatever.
I'm the Witcher. Yes, you are.
Yeah, you are.
So he doesn't tell anybody what happened, but they have a feast to celebrate him coming back. And as they're all like partying it up, this is where he kind of finds out about the tournament that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And he sees Mello like sidled up with a girl, and it like makes him sad, and he like sulks off to think about Isolde, but then comes back to the castle to basically talk Lord Mark into battling in the tournament.
Yeah.
And his ulterior motive is to go to Ireland to see if he can find her.
Right. The way he sells it is, why don't you send me? I'll be your champion. I'll fight for you. And then if England unites behind you and like the ones that stay loyal, they can all split the land and you keep the daughter, you know, you keep the prize or whatever, you know.
He even goes beyond that. He's like, maybe this will solve another problem, which is like your broken heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, because as we know from earlier in the movie, so 9 years in the past, his pregnant wife is killed in that first siege. And so he does say, let me bring you back a wife.
Yeah.
Like, let me bring somebody back for you, which I think a part of that is there is probably a very limited selection in Cornwall of people his age, eligible, who
that aren't directly related to him, probably.
Aren't directly related to him or taken in some way. And so, like, that makes sense to me.
And also, if you're like a prospective king, you do want to remain available for prospective alliances at that time period, right? So this would be like the best alliance you could get. So, you know, there's no reason not to accept that betrothment or whatever you would call that.
Betrothal, yeah. So everyone sails over to Ireland. They do get safe passage. The tournament is
rigged.
It's very rigged. Everyone's prepping, but Wictrick has clearly rigged the tournament so that he's not having to have hard battles. People are losing to him on purpose.
Which seems insane to me. If you're going to skate through a tournament, but you know you're going to have to fight someone who didn't in the last round, you're definitely going to lose.
The one thing that he does have going for him, because he and Tristan fights his way to the top.
Yes.
But that means that Tristan's been fighting all day. He's probably injured.
That
he's
is
probably
true.
Tired.
You're right. That's a good point. I didn't think about that.
He's injured and tired, and Wictrick isn't because he hasn't really had to fight all day.
Yeah, there's one guy he just kicked in the nuts. And he was like, oh, my pestos. And he fell down.
My pine nuts. So it gets down to Wictred versus Tristan. Everyone else is out.
She notices it's Tristan. Isolde does.
She does. He doesn't see her because she has a veil on.
Yes.
Yes, because she's like, if I'm a present, I guess I'll be wrapped. And I was like,
Yeah.
But she thinks if Tristan wins, she's going to be his wife, which is what she wants anyway. So she's like super
That's
excited.
what she wants anyway.
Wait, hold on. I have to unpack the scene where one of the king's men comes to check on her, and then like she shoots him a bunch of attitude, and his face is like, "Lady, this is my job."
Yeah.
I'm just delivering a message. You are not mad at me?
Like it. The camera stays on him for like 10 seconds. He's like,
I wish you guys could
Okay.
see Mikey's face because he's nailing it.
This movie gives the impression that most of Ireland is happy to be rid of her. They're just like, oh, that mouthy princess. She's the worst. Yes, send her to England. But Tristan hasn't seen her, and he's looking around the crowd for her, but he doesn't see her.
Right.
So he and Wictred start to fight, and he's exhausted and hurt, and Wictred is pretty fresh. But even so, Wictred gets his arm and his leg, like he gets some small cuts in, but he ends up taking one of Wictred's swords and then pinning him with a dagger against his throat.
Yeah, Wictred's actually on top of him, but he's holding a dagger against his throat. So Wictred yields, or whatever you call it.
Right.
Yeah, he yields.
Yeah. So Tristan wins, and then Isolde comes over, and she's like, you won me, yay! And he's like, fuck.
Yeah, I mean, this is his best acting in the movie because he's like,
Yeah.
he's like super adrenaline hyped, and then like she like undoes the veil, and he's like,
Oh, this is terrible news.
no.
But here's my thing though. If they had landed back on the shores in Cornwall and just been like, horrible mix-up, here's what happened.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I know what you're gonna say. If they would have just told Mark, I think Mark would have let him marry her.
Yes, me too. Because at the end, after they get caught and it like wrecks the whole country, he still lets them go.
Yeah, he wants them to have a life together, just away from them. But
Yes.
yeah, absolutely, Paige.
Yeah, so I feel like if they had just told him, this movie wouldn't have been a problem. She would have married Tristan. That like it would have been fine.
They could have been honest and been like, hey, remember when I went to Ireland and like a girl nursed me back to health and like we totally hooked up? Like this is the girl and I'm in love with her. And he's like, oh my God, that's the girl?
But he didn't tell anybody the story, and that's the problem.
But Paige, he knew no one would believe him. They'd be like, oh yeah, what'd you meet her at camp? Yeah. Oh, is your girlfriend in Canada?
She's from Niagara Falls.
Sure. Sure, Tristan. I'm sure you totally got laid at camp.
I don't know. I bet Tristan.
Yeah, Tristan
Yeah.
fucks.
I think they would have believed him, and it would have been fine.
I mean, I do think he would have had them marry. And honestly, the alliance still holds because he's his second. He's going to inherit. You know, so at the end of the day, as far as political alliances go, it's still good for the Irish.
I think Tristan was fucking against the corn wall, the corn table, the corn bed.
That joke was super corny, but I'm here for it.
Tristan's father was also a chieftain.
Yeah.
Tristan has lands. Like, Tristan is also noble in his own right.
See, I assumed that Lord Mark just absorbed Tristan's
Yes.
lands and is like ruling his, but also ruling Tristan's as like a regent for Tristan, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
and in this, when he names Tristan his second, he's just like, they don't say this, but in my mind, I was like, they're just going to combine the kingdoms.
Yeah.
And it's going to be Tristan who takes over both.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the implication.
Yeah.
So they should have just married. Anyway.
But guys don't share their feelings. And
Exactly.
This is toxic masculinity.
Yes, exactly. And as they're sailing over, like Isolde even brings that up. She's like, we have to tell people, like, we cannot hide this. And he's like, no, we have to hide this. We have to do it for the good of the country or whatever. And I do think when they landed, they'd be like, hey, Lord Mark, can we talk to you for like 5 minutes before you guys
Yeah.
get married and you start to develop the feels? Like, let's figure this out. And I think he would have been fine with it. He'd have been like,
Yeah.
Tristan, you take this one, I'll get the next one, all right? Let's just find someone my own age that's like age appropriate for me.
No, he needs an heir. Yeah.
Well, he needs an heir because he doesn't have one. Mello's the closest he has.
Yeah.
But also, I don't know that there is a woman his age. The only one who we see is his sister. We don't really see any other older women.
And they're not Lannisters, so that's not going to work out.
Yeah. And plus, that tower is not tall enough to push children out.
No, it is, though.
Every tower is tall enough to push children out of.
All you have to do is believe, Paige.
Yeah.
So on the boat, she wants to tell, he doesn't.
Right.
They land and they decide not to tell. But as they land, as they're like getting ready, back in Cornwall, as they're getting ready for them to land and to meet Isolde, Lord Mark is like, well, what if she doesn't like me? Like, he's very humanized in this movie. And I feel like I like it. More movies should do that.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's great.
She gets out of the carriage and she's gorgeous, obviously. He, instead of being creepy like her other betrothed, is literally just like, welcome, come inside. Like, I know we're your rival, but like, you're welcome here. Please come inside.
Yeah.
Our kingdom is your kingdom, basically. We cut to, she preps her wedding dress, and as she's doing that, that's when he puts on the fake iron hand, like Chubbs and Happy Gilmore.
Yeah.
Which, I should say, it's great that he has a fake hand. Good. I'm glad they were able to figure something out for him so that he has some extra mobility. It just looks so much like the one from Happy Gilmore, it's hard to not notice.
I do think that that's very funny, although I think for practical reasons they did that. Like, as far as like filmmaking practical reasons, it's easier to put an awkward glove on an actual hand and pretend it's a fake hand than it is to like wear a nub the whole movie, you know?
Yeah. So the wedding starts. So she has a procession along the kind of river near Cornwall.
Dude, this was so cool. I loved the procession. I thought it looked awesome.
It's beautiful, although after watching the documentary around the making of this film, that was one of the toughest scenes to shoot because they were in the middle of what was called midge season. They're like a little like gnat kind of mosquito-y thing.
Oh, I know midges. Were they in Scotland?
Yes.
Yeah, I was about to say, midges are no joke. When we went there, it was a big problem.
They were being basically eaten alive because they're out on the water at night. And so they had to buy just cases of repellent and just constantly spray them down. And it was like freezing cold or something like that. So they're like freezing, covered in repellent, and still being eaten alive by midges. So apparently this was like miserable to shoot, but it looks so cool.
It does. It looks amazing. I'm so glad they suffered through it because it looks awesome.
It looks amazing. They get married. Tristan watches and then kind of like runs off because he can't bear to think about it.
He literally goes to his bro's house and he's like, hey, Mikey, can I stay with you for a while?
Yeah.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah.
Always welcome.
Can I sleep on your sectional?
I've got a guest bed.
Oh, hell yeah, Mikey.
Before that happens, they're dancing after the wedding, and Lord Mark is basically like, we're going to call it a night. Like, we're going.
Oh, yeah. This is when she, like, gets right in his ear. Like, Isolde gets in Tristan's ear, and she's like, don't make me do this. And he's like, we have to for the country or whatever. And she goes, all right, well, I'm going to think it's you. Bye.
I'll pretend it's you.
Yeah.
Which is just like, oof.
Yeah.
And he rides off, but he goes off into the woods first and literally sits underneath the tower. He can see their window, and then he goes to their friend's house. We cut to that wedding night, which is like so awkward because she is considered property. It's not great. You don't want her to be in this position. 2020 vision, you're just like,
I mean, 2020 vision, there is no consent here, so it is rape.
Yeah.
I will say it is, God, I don't want to say this sentence. It's better than what it would have been had she married that Irish general. It's still bad.
Yeah.
I think he could have been like, let's wait till you're ready. And we could have moved this part over.
Sure.
Yeah. And what we get instead is his speech of like, hey, I get that you're scared and I'm a stranger, but I don't want you to be afraid of me.
Yeah.
My goal is to make you happy. And he also apologizes for only having one hand. And I'm just like, it's one hand. Like, she can deal. Everyone in this city is missing a limb. Like, don't worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
It's fine. But yeah, it's not great. We cut to the next morning, though, and they're kind of cuddly the next morning out on the balcony, and she's wearing her bracelet from Tristan.
Well, he even asks about it, yeah.
Yeah, and she's like, oh, you know, who does she say made it?
She just says it was a present. She doesn't say who made it.
It was a present.
Yeah.
She doesn't say who made it.
Which is true.
Which is true. So, meanwhile, she basically kind of makes herself at home at the castle, and Tristan is just never around. He
Yeah.
sometimes sees them in the market and tries to avoid them, but now at this point, she and Lord Mark are actually getting along because he's not a bad dude.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Like,
and he treats her
yeah.
good for this time period.
For this time period, he treats her fantastic.
Yeah.
Like, and that's the rough part where you're like, it's not great. She was still property, but like,
Yeah.
he's treating property better than almost anyone does
Yeah.
at this time. And they finally run into Tristan in the market, and she's like, I'll talk to him because he seems a little depressed.
I thought this was a little subtle dig though, because she's like, it's Lord Mark, his sister, and Isolde there.
Yeah.
And they're like, I wonder what's wrong with Tristan. And she's like, well, maybe he just needs to talk to somebody his own age.
Yeah.
And then she walks over.
goes over.
I was like,
Smooth.
damn, she knows she's
Smooth.
way too young for him.
Yep. And she basically goes to talk to Tristan, and Tristan, I think it's pretty unfair what Tristan says to her at this point, where
yeah.
he's just like, I thought you'd have a problem being queen and that you'd be conflicted, but you don't seem too conflicted. You seem like you're having a good time.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm trying not to get killed in these streets, man.
Yeah. She's like, I'm a stranger in a strange land, and I have to play this role that you forced me to play.
Yeah. And also, she also at one point tells him, like, he's a kind man. Like I get that this is not what I wanted, and this is not it's not you, but he's also not a bad guy. Like,
He's not too handsy.
he's one handsy. So she then tells him, like, do you know that Roman bridge? I can get to it without being seen, and I would go there anytime to be with you. And so we cut to the castle where they're determining when the coronation's going to be. They're all going to sign the treaty under Lord Mark, and he names Tristan as his second instead of Mello.
Yeah.
And Mello does not take it well.
No, he's clearly upset about it.
Clearly upset about it. And Tristan also doesn't want the job because he doesn't want to have to be around. And so at this point, Lord Mark and Isolde kind of confront him of like, hey, you've been kind of depressed and not around recently. Maybe you should take a wife. And he's like,
Maybe I should take your wife.
yep.
He's like, also, I was dead like a month ago. Do you guys remember when I was dead?
That was recently.
A lot has happened.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming.
I've been to Ireland twice in a month. It's too much.
So many potatoes. But Isolde basically is like, hey, if you live without love, you'll die. And he's like, fine, then I won't. Which is basically almost like code for like, I'll meet you at that bridge.
Meet me at the bridge.
That night, the warriors ride out for the full moon, and Lord Mark is like, I'll miss you tonight. Basically, like, I'm not coming home. I'm going out with the boys or whatever.
Yeah, we're going clubbing in the woods.
Yeah. Gotta find all those pornos we hid in stumps.
Oh no, his arm?
So Isolde goes to the Roman bridge. Only her nurse sees. She's the only one who knows.
Yeah.
And Tristan rides out with the warriors and then breaks off from the pack as they ride and turns back. And Wictred notices but doesn't follow him.
Right.
So he meets her at the bridge and they go to those ruins, the Roman ruins, and just
Ruin each other.
bozo. Yes.
I think it's like La Pound Town.
Yes. And meanwhile, as that's happening, while the warriors are riding, a wild boar throws Lord Mark from his horse, and he just says, nothing hurt but my pride.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of juxtaposed against what's happening.
Yeah. Because Tristan does not get bucked off his horse. You know what I'm saying?
No, and then like she pulls that move where like they want to ask you questions while you're inside them.
Yeah.
How many have you loved before me? How many have you loved after me? And
You're like, I can't do math right now. Damn it.
I was like, there was the corn wall, the corn bed.
This exact thing is why when I was reading the second 50 Shades book, I would routinely throw it against a wall. Because in the book, and it's been so long since I saw that movie. I don't remember if she was in the movie, but in the book, she's constantly like in the like mid-sex being like, tell me about your childhood trauma. And I'm just like, bitch, no, like
That is not the time.
it's not the time. Anyway,
We got to do another one of those soon.
we do.
I just want to hear Mikey giggle uncomfortably.
Oh my God. The second one is hysterically bad too.
I can't wait.
I also caught part of the third one the other day and it was also pretty bad.
Nice.
So like They go back to the castle, and there's a feast and celebrating, and Mello tries to talk to Tristan about being named second, and Tristan is not listening to him, and he hates it.
He's just like locked in on Isolde, and she's dancing with Lord Mark.
Right.
And he's like, listen to me while I'm talking to you, Tristan.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Tristan takes Isolde's scarf and leaves and ties her scarf on a door. She follows. She opens that door, and they like bone zone, literally feet from where everyone else is.
Just downstairs. They're
Yeah.
so close to where the party is going on.
Well, and Lord Mark is looking for her and just doesn't realize that they're hooking up like feet away. We cut to her in bed with him later that night, and there is a shift from that first encounter we see is like non-consensual, which is real rough. But then as it goes, that does kind of change, because we do see her kissing back and stuff in this scene where it's like she doesn't hate him. She doesn't.
She's having her cake and eating it too.
Well, and we cut from that to her with Tristan in the Roman ruins, and she's basically like, we'll never have couple stuff. Like, we can't have, like, what if we had a baby? And he's like, would it be his or mine? And she's like, I'd have no way to know. There's no way I could know.
But I mean, if it had two hands, you'd know, right?
Oh, man.
It just comes out with like broccoli hair. I think that one's Tristan's.
Yeah.
This is the place where she says, he's a kind man. I cannot hate him.
Yeah.
But this is also where she's like, we'll never get to like hold hands in the market or anything. Like, we can never really be together.
Right.
And so the next day in the market, he makes her a flower bracelet like he did for his mom and grabs her hand to put it on. So he does hold her hand in the market.
But Wictred sees it.
Wictred sees
Yeah.
it. So we cut to that night where Isolde has snuck out, but Lord Mark is looking for her, and they have to rush back into the castle, and she takes the trap door to get back up and literally basically goes to get into bed, and she's like, oh, I was helping a woman's child from the market. And he's like, I didn't ask you where you were. Like, you know, I trust you. And this is where he asks her, he's like, is there anything I can do to make you happy? Which is very like, he so badly wants her to be happy. It's so sad.
He's like fully in love with her.
Yeah. Well, and she, in this scene, she's like, I'm fine, and kisses him on the forehead.
Yeah.
So she's kind of still like playing it.
But kisses him on the forehead. She's not like, I mean, that's like what you would do to your dad.
Yeah.
And he's like probably the age of.
Just about. Yeah.
So it checks out.
Yeah, it checks out. We cut to Ireland, where Wictred is telling the king, like, hey, your daughter is secretly sleeping with Tristan, and so we could use this to our advantage.
Yes.
And so they decide that they're going to try and take over the kingdom during the coronation. So we cut to Lord Mark's talking to Tristan, and he's found the little flower bracelet, and he's like, do you think that I might be blind and she's cheating on me, and the reason I can't see it is because I love her? And Tristan's like, of course she's not cheating on you. Which is like, what? No. What? Cheating? No. Oh, I don't think. No.
It's probably anything else.
Yes.
Anything.
So he throws the bracelet away.
Yeah. I think he like crushes it and throws it in the water, right? Because they're above the water at this point.
Yeah. And Tristan goes and burns the villa.
Oh, yeah.
Where they meet.
Well, I think he feels bad because he realizes that Lord Mark loves Isolde.
Yeah. And is taking care of her and being nice to, you know, like he is treating her well and also loves her. And I feel like in this scene, Lord Mark is like, I didn't realize how unhappy I had been, and this is making me very happy. And I think he doesn't want to ruin that. So meanwhile, the Irish arrive for the coronation. They crown Isolde. But as that's happening, the Irish kill the scouts and sneak ashore. So they like left a bunch of boats offshore, and they're like, don't worry, it's just a small party of people here. But then those boats come ashore during the coronation and the wedding and everything.
Well, yeah, because they send out the signal, which is like they light like a fire or something. I can't remember.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Wictred, at the reception, basically talks them into having Tristan dance with Isolde. And she's like, while they're dancing, she's talking, why did you burn it? And he's like, you know why I did. Like, this has to stop. And she just says, meet me there now or I'll die. And Wictred decides that they can't accuse them. They need proof. And so he talks everyone into riding out for the full moon. And so as they're doing that, Tristan and Isolde have snuck off. And Wictred takes them on a path that literally leads them right by Tristan and Isolde, and they're discovered.
Yeah. And they're like talking about why they can't do it anymore, why he burned the villa place, all that stuff. So like,
Right.
I mean, they're sort of they're ending things, but it's too late because why else would they be there alone together at night? Like, there's no way to
Right.
explain away what they were doing, even though they weren't like caught having sex. It's still very clear.
Right, exactly. And her father rode out with the warriors, and so he does. And here's the thing: he already knows it was happening.
this was
because
planned.
Wictred told him. But he makes this big show of like, oh, you're just passing my daughter around, and it's like, no, that's not at all what was happening. But that's what he's going to use as reason to attack and to split the alliance.
Yeah.
And they seize them because it's obviously a crime to, sleep with the queen if you're not the king.
Yeah.
And as Mello rides past, he spits on him. And I just had a moment of like, oh, Henry Cavill spitting on me?
Paige, no, Paige, unless like you're into it and you're both consenting adults, then have fun.
All I'm saying is like, hey, if he ever gets a chance to spit on me, use this podcast as consent. That's going to be fun.
I do feel like I might be using audio from this episode in a court battle in the future.
Where he's like, I'm filing this restraining order.
Judge, she said she wanted me to spit on her.
Yeah, if you can refer to this clip where Paige is like, Henry Cavill needs to spit in my mouth or I will kill him.
I mean, in the mouth is a little intense. Anyway, I'm just saying, it's done as an insult here, but I'm just like,
Here for it? What you're saying is you're here for it.
here for it, though.
You just want to catch some fluids from the Cavill on.
Jesus, Todd. Yes.
I'll never wash this forehead again.
Oh, man.
Oh, well, we are disgusting people.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I mean, I don't think Mikey is. I think Mikey's the prude of the cast. I think you and I are very much not.
Absolutely.
Hey, y'all never been spit on? Come on.
Come on. Y'all never spit on somebody? Come on.
Y'all never spit in a sexual context? Get right.
Come on. Do it right. And Mikey in the back of his head is thinking, I don't like a quitter. Mikey's so embarrassed right now. I love it. Mikey's starting his shoot-off podcast called The Prude Cast.
Oh,
where they talk about missionary.
I'm just saying, if you time it right, spitting can be great.
Mikey's first episode, 3 to 7 minutes in heaven.
It's more like purgatory.
Well, for her, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I love you, Mike.
I love y'all.
So the Irish are preparing to attack. Wictred is rallying all of the other lords behind him, and Mello overhears it. And Wictred basically is like, you know who should have been in charge this whole time?
And has 2 thumbs? This guy. Oh, no, he does. He says Mello.
He says Mello, and Mello's like, I like this plan. And I'm just like...
But I think it's because Wictred always planned on killing Mello.
Absolutely.
It's gotta be, right?
Absolutely, yes. He is playing on Mello. He knows Mello feels dejected.
Yes.
He knows that he's jealous of Tristan.
Well,
Yeah.
he dodoesn't know this, but I mean, he obviously knows that Mello is his nickname, but his real name is Melodramatic.
he's playing on that jealousy and dejectedness to be like, I bet Mello had feelings about this, so if we make him the leader, he's just cocky enough to do it.
Yeah.
And so, meanwhile, in the dungeon, Lord Mark confronts Tristan, and Tristan doesn't say anything about what happened. He just takes it. He's just like, every insult you got, come on in. So Lord Mark then goes to Isolde's room, and the nurse is like, I'm not going to let you harm her. And he just kind of moves the nurse out of the way because he has no intention of harming her at least at this point that we know of. And he basically just comes in and says, how long? And this is where she reveals, since you thought he was dead, I found him on the beach. I nursed him back to life. I sent him back. Then he came to the tournament. He didn't realize it was me. And then he won me for you, and we didn't know what to do. We cut back to Mello and Wictred, and he tells Wictred about the tunnel that comes up under the castle.
Yeah.
And so they set off for the tunnel. Then guards from the palace take Tristan and Isolde out into the woods, and they basically set them free.
Yeah, like literally give them a boat and say, get out of here. The Irish are already surrounding the castle. Just leave. We've got other stuff to do.
Yeah, and it's the will of the king. So
Yes.
basically he heard her story and was like, I can't stand in the way of that. Go. Which makes me think if they just told him in the first place.
No, I completely agree with that. I do think that he would have been cool with it and everything would have been fine.
Yeah.
But this is where Tristan is like, hey, if we stay together, our love will be the love that destroyed a kingdom, right?
Yes. Mhm.
So he like shoves her and her handmaid or whatever you call her.
Yeah, he's like, bye, ho.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, shoves their boat. He doesn't shove them into the water like, get out of here. No, he puts them in the boat and then he looks like he's going to jump in, but he shoves them at the last minute. And then they go down because they don't have a paddle. So they just drift down the river until they hit land, I guess. Because we do see her later. So she comes back, but she misses the battle. Like he saves her life here.
Right. So the Irish start to invade and they pull up the drawbridge of the keep. So the Irish are all kind of stopped at that point until the bridge can come down. But we cut to the tunnel where Mello's taking Wictred through and he hears people behind them and turns to realize that they've just let a whole slew of soldiers in through the bottom of the keep, and Wictred stabs him.
Mello draws his sword and tries to fight everybody.
Well, so
He does.
Wictred brings his men. Like, it's just Mello and Wictred. Mello thinks it's just the two of them. But as Mello goes first in the tunnel, Wictred calls his guys over, and they go in after him. And it's the moment that Mello sees the other guys that he's like, oh, you're double-crossing me. Fuck, I'm about to die. So he tries to fight back, but it doesn't last very long because it's like him and 20 dudes or like 12 dudes. It's an unfair fight.
Yeah, in an enclosed space, too. So he fights off like one or two of them, but he gets mortally wounded pretty quickly.
He's for the worms.
Yep. They come up into the bottom of the keep, and they're trying to get the bridge down.
I love that they do, like, lock it with, like, the equivalent of what I used to lock up my gym clothes in elementary or in middle school. They have, like, a padlock. I was like, I don't think that's like 300 AD technology, but whatever.
It just says master lock, and they're like mixing up the numbers.
We can't disobey master.
Ridley Scott's just like, no one will notice. It's fine.
And then we just see Wictred going up and just like, 4, 2. No, that's
Is it
not
his
it.
birthday? What's his birthday? Sorry.
It's the Lord's birthday.
What's his mother's maiden name's birthday?
Just the mother's maiden name's birthday? Yeah.
Meanwhile, behind them, Tristan takes the tunnel as well.
Yeah.
Everyone at the top of the keep then goes down to the bottom of the keep to fight to keep the gate locked, but they keep trying to break the chain. Meanwhile, in the tunnel, Tristan finds Mello, and Mello is dying.
Yeah.
And is basically like, I led them here because I thought someone believed in me. Which is so sad
It is
that
sad.
he's just like...
Mello's story is super sad. I mean, he doesn't make good decisions, but it's still very sad. I felt very sad for him.
Very melodramatic.
But he basically then asks Tristan, he's like, please build my boat, and then he just dies.
Yeah.
At which point I was just like, well, what do we want to watch now?
You only have 10 minutes left of this movie, and you're already like turning it off to like go find the next Mello joint.
So meanwhile, an archer down in the bottom of the keep keeps picking Mark and his men off as they try to get down into the bottom of the keep, basically through the doorway. He's getting them, each one of them.
Yeah, they're just like hunkered down because they can't get past because the archer keeps shooting anyone who stands up, right?
Right.
And Mark is like asking for a shield. He's like, bring me a shield. Bring me a shield. And Wictred's men are just like hacking away at that padlock.
Yeah.
Right? That's like, it's holding the drawbridge up. So the Irish guys outside can't get in. But like, once Tristan comes up and they're like, Tristan's there. Is he fighting with the Irish? He's like, And Mark is like, no, he's fighting for us. And then Mark like gets up and runs down and literally
Takes
just
an
takes
arrow
an
to
arrow
the
in the arm. He's just like, I don't care. Give me an arrow. And he like gets shot. He knocks it off with his own sword. And then he's like, that's my bum arm anyway. What am I going to do? Pull people? It's fine. I don't care. And then they just start going to help Tristan. But Tristan and Wichtred are like going at it, man.
Yeah. Well, so Tristan just starts wrecking fools.
Oh, yeah.
And then Wichtred stabs him.
Yeah.
As they get the gate going, and Tristan basically stabs his sword in to stop the gate.
Which is cool.
It is cool,
Which is
yeah.
pretty
But he
cool.
very much gives up any chance of survival by doing that because he can no longer
Yes.
fight. He can only like just get stabbed, and that's what happens.
Yeah. And which is what happened. Richard stabs him in the chest with a sword. He pulls it out of his own chest and stabs Wichtred back.
It is sort of badass.
It's pretty badass, but taking the projectile out of you will make you bleed out faster. So
And he does, yeah.
yeah, and he does. He knows he's dying. But so he decides that like maybe they can win it on bravado. So he hacks Wichtred's head off
I love this.
and walks down the drawbridge. They lower the drawbridge and he walks down carrying Wichtred's head.
He literally holds it up and it's like the biggest Uno reverse card ever. They're like, you can fight for that guy and die for this guy who's not even from our land for the rest of your lives. Or you can fight for this guy who's actually a pretty decent dude. And he just like, Uno reverse. And then they all start killing the Irish king.
Yeah, they end up killing the Irish king. The Irish retreats. It starts with an archer getting the Irish king in the back.
Yes.
Which is brutal.
It's awesome.
So they kill the shit out of that guy.
Yeah.
And Tristan collapses and he just says, take me out of here. Take me to the river.
Yeah.
So they take him to the river. And meanwhile, Isolde has made her way back to the castle. She finds Lord Mark's like captain, like his main general, who takes her to Tristan down at the river where Tristan is fully dying. And Mark says goodbye and then has to go to battle. And the other general says goodbye. And then Isolde kneels beside him and he basically dies.
Yeah, he does.
And we get a cut back to her reading poetry to him back in her little sea shack. But then we cut back to present day where she's crying over his dead body. And we get a title card that's like, you know, they did defeat the Irish and she buried him in the ruins and then disappeared.
Well, and then planted 2 oak trees that grew intertwined. I thought it was super sweet.
Right.
Oh, I thought the oak trees disappeared.
No, she disappeared.
She disappeared.
Yeah.
She didn't stay with Mark?
There was a part of me that's like, I mean, just stay with that guy.
Yeah, Mark's a good dude, and I do think Mark would have loved her, and like he seemed understanding. I don't know.
I think if you reread the title card, I think the oak trees disappear.
Not that I know of.
No, it clearly says they grew intertwined together.
And then disappeared.
No, and then she disappeared.
The phrasing is not clear. I'm just saying. I was like, oh, why'd those trees disappear?
Wow, Mikey, you are focused on the wrong part of this movie.
Anyway, and
that's the movie.
You guys think they're still together?
I mean, I'm like you. I am in favor of a disappearing tree narrative where she goes back to Lord Mark.
Same.
I just don't think that's what happened.
Yeah. Wait, when you say they, do you mean Lord Mark and Isolde, or do you mean the trees, or do you mean?
Oh no, I think Lord Mark and Isolde is what I said because Tristan's clearly dead.
Yeah, he's done so. I think the trees are still together. I don't know about Lord Mark and Isolde, and I know Tristan's dead, so he's out.
Right.
Oh man, so what do you guys think? Having seen it, having talked about it, what do you guys think about it? Final thoughts, hit me.
It's good. It's okay. I would put it as solidly okay. And the reason that I've seen it so many times is purely the Cavill effect.
Yeah. The Cavill effect is great. I like that a lot.
I dug it, man. I thought it was pretty good. I hadn't seen it, so I really liked watching it. It was like more action oriented than I was used to, so I was down for it.
Nice.
Yeah, I liked it a lot too. I think it's great. I think everyone should watch it. I don't think it's as good as some other Scott like historical epics like The Kingdom of Heaven. I thought was really great. At least the director's cut is really great.
Yeah.
But that's because Ridley Scott actually directed that one. He didn't direct or write this one. He's just the executive producer on this one. And I think the director did a fine job. I just think Ridley Scott, he's so good at this specifically that I feel like it would have been a little bit better had he been directing, but it's still good. I think you should watch it. But I mean, yeah, that's sort of how I feel about it. It's super sad. I was crying a lot at the end.
Yeah, I mean, the first few times I saw it, I definitely ended up eventually crying at the very, very end, because I thought for sure, I was like, either they're going to get away or they're both going to die.
Yeah.
And the idea that she then has to live after, I was just like, ooh.
Well, there's a reading where she doesn't live after too much afterwards. She buries his body, plants the trees, and then maybe complete suicide, and that's why she's never seen again.
Yeah, potentially. There's a lot of, this is an old legend, and there's a lot of different endings. And in one of them, she potentially takes her own life. However, there's a lot of them where she dies with him, where like she is also poisoned, where it's a lot more Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
Or there are a number of readings where she lives and she becomes an old woman and rules as queen. Like, there's a lot of different
I like that
options.
one, too.
I like that one,
Yeah.
too. This one just takes this,
A different path. And because it is like an old legend, I'm sure there's many, many different readings of it out there because it's been told thousands and thousands of times,
Yep.
But Paige, do you have some fun facts for us?
I do.
Nice. Hit us with your fun facts.
Tristan, fun facts. So the first written version of Tristan and Isolde was actually done in France around 1235. Now, I say
Wow.
first written because before that there was a very strong oral tradition, and this is
Yeah,
a
there
story that
was.
had kind of made the rounds for a long time. There are also a lot of references to older sources brought to France by English exiles, but they haven't been able to be found.
So it's very possible it existed in a written form before that. This is just the oldest
Right.
one that we found since history started being recorded.
Yeah. In some cases, Tristan is called Tristram, so it's an alternate spelling of the name.
Interesting. Okay.
And in some, Isolde is spelled a couple different ways, even sometimes beginning with a Y.
Oh.
In some cases, people consider Tristan and Isolde to be a kind of side quest of Arthurian legends of King Arthur's Camelot.
I can see
Where in some texts, they actually like meet them as characters. So they think that some scholars think they originated as a same source story, and that Mark is Arthur, Tristan is Lancelot.
Yeah, there are some
Isolde is
overlaps.
Guinevere.
Yeah.
But in some King Arthur books, Mark's kingdom coexists with Arthur and Camelot, and Lancelot and Tristan actually meet as warriors. So there are like a couple different options for it.
This is part of the extended Lady of the Lake universe.
I'm here for that crossover.
Yeah, me too. Let's build that up like the MCU.
Some versions also include a love potion, so that like Tristan and Isolde aren't actually, like, they didn't actually fall in love. They fall in love because of a love potion, and that's why. But it was cut out of a number of versions. It seems that the only one that endures in is versions around the same time that the opera came out, because the best known version of the story is Wagner's opera, which is written in 1859 and first performed in 1865. So they think that potentially the love potion is added in some versions around that time to avoid censors, because ecclesiastical or religious censors would have needed an excuse for the adulterous behavior of sympathetic characters.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Now, let's get into more like movie fun facts. So originally, Ridley Scott was going to direct this film in the late 70s.
Whoa, really?
Yes.
That's early on in his like career.
Early. He was going to direct it right after his debut film, The Duelist,
Okay.
Which came out in 1977.
Yeah.
But instead, he decided to work on a little pet project called Alien. I think he made the right choice.
Oh, he absolutely did. Yeah.
Yes.
As good as this movie is, it's no Alien.
Yeah. The costume, the wedding gown used in this movie is actually reused. It was originally used in Arabian Nights from the year 2000. So they just literally were recycling costumes in this movie even. And in part because one of the companies financing this movie went bankrupt because of it. So like there was a small company that was one of the stakeholders, and it's their last movie before they go bankrupt.
Wow.
Yeah. Mark Strong, who plays Wichtred, and Henry Cavill also starred together in Stardust the very next year.
Oh, I love that movie so
We
much.
have to do Stardust.
I didn't know Henry Cavill was in that.
Oh, yeah.
He's the blonde guy that she's like, he's her asshole boyfriend or whatever. It's a very unusual role for him, but he's kind of hilarious in it. But yeah, finally, James Franco has repeatedly gone on record as saying that this is his most regrettable role. And when I found that out, I was like, I gotta know why he hated this movie.
Yeah, because he's done worse movies than this.
So many worse movies than this,
Yeah.
but according to him, no. Because, well, and I guess maybe some of those have come since. So there's an interview in 2012 where he talks about it. That's where I found this.
Okay.
So he says that he signed on 9 months before the movie was going to actually shoot, and read the script, wasn't sure about it, but an acting teacher and his manager were like, dude, you gotta do this movie. And they told him that Brando or Olivier would have totally done it. And I'm like, yeah, but also that was 60 years ago. So like, anyway, so he signs on to do it 9 months in advance and spent every day practicing sword fighting. Like, because he had never done sword fighting in movies before. So he would practice sword fighting.
That's wild because there's not a lot of sword fighting in this movie.
Well, that's part of the problem. So he actually also practiced riding horses so he could do a lot of like horse stunts. So he basically did everything so he could do all his own stunts and make it look real. But when he got out to Ireland to shoot, they had a new version of the script and all of the Braveheart style battle scenes, quotes, were changed to stealthy murders, and all of the training I did was useless.
That's because of budget. They cut that shit for budget.
Yeah, but now he's mad. He's like, well, I worked on it. Then the shoot moved to Prague for more budgetary concerns. And in the process, he ends up suffering an injury, which would later require surgery. And it actually puts production on hold for a little while. Yeah. And apparently he and the director got into arguments over like what they could shoot, what they couldn't shoot, his injury, whatever. But essentially, he ends up hating this production the whole time. And he then says, the lesson is I'll never do a movie again that I don't have a special feeling for. And I'm like, okay, but then explain your other shitty movies.
Yeah, like,
Right.
I mean, I love Pineapple Express, but did that give you a special feeling?
I mean, I think so. I think that was a little more collaborative with him and Seth Rogen.
That's probably
and that was
true,
like
yeah.
a thing. But I have seen some other shitty James Franco movies. Yeah, do you feel special about Arctic Dogs?
How about The Mad Whale? Well, thank you for those fun facts, Paige. Let's talk some box office. So this movie, as Paige mentioned, came out in 2006. What do you think the budget was for this movie?
Given that there were so many budgetary changes, it seems, I think this is probably lower than we thought. I'm going to say 12 million.
I'm going to say 18.5.
Okay. I looked very, very hard for this. I only found one source, and even that source said it was very unofficial, quote unquote. But it said it was $31 million.
Oh, wow.
Wow. I mean, that makes sense because they had to build those
all these
villages and
sets.
stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there are some pretty legit sets. There are some horse work. It is a historical epic. That budget did not surprise me. I mean, it compared that to like Kingdom of Heaven, which was Ridley Scott the year before this, but similar kind of vibe.
Yeah.
The budget for that was $130 million.
Jeez.
So, I mean, this is a historical epic on a budget, and it sort of looks that way. I could see that.
Well, you can tell the battles are very small scale.
Yes, that's what I mean. Like, I think if I was Franco and I thought I was making Kingdom of Heaven and I ended up making this, I'd be a little upset about this too.
Yeah.
You know, I think I could see that. Anyway, so it came out on January 13th, 2006, and it was 8th the weekend it came out. It was beat by Glory Road, Last Holiday, Hoodwinked, The Chronicles of Narnia, Hostel was number 5, and then Fun with Dick and Jane and King and Kong were 6 and 7, and then Tristan and Isolde was number 8. What do you think it made in the box office its opening weekend?
I saw it opening weekend, but also I would like to highlight something. I don't know if you remember, this is also the heyday of SNL digital shorts.
Yes.
Where they had the song about the chronic, what
Cools
Cools
with
of
Narnia,
Narnia.
yeah.
And so that movie made a lot more money than it should have.
Yeah.
This, I'm going to guess, probably made $2 million.
All right. Mikey, do you have a guess?
I'm going to say more. I'm going to say like 12.
Okay. In its opening weekend, it made $6.5 million. Remember, it was number 8
8.
in the box office that weekend, but it did go on to make a total of $14.7 million domestically.
Yikes.
And then $2.7 million internationally for a total worldwide box office of $17.4 million.
Oh,
Yeah, so
ouch.
if that budget is right, and I don't know that it is, but it's the only figure I could find online at $31 million, they super lost money. If you account for home market performance, which is like DVD and Blu-ray sales, it adds another $15 million. So it's pretty good in the home market, but still, that barely puts it at its budget.
Yeah.
And that budget does not account for marketing or anything like that. So this movie fully lost money.
Oh, yeah.
But that is your box office. So this week we watched Tristan and Isolde. What are we watching next week, Paige?
It's Mikey's turn.
It's my turn.
Well, Mikey, what are we watching next week?
Yeah, it's going to be Pride Month.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to pick I Love You, Phillip Morris.
Oh, awesome. I haven't seen that
Yay.
movie.
It's really funny.
Awesome.
It's been a long time, and I remembered liking it a lot, so I am actually very excited.
Well, awesome. I'm not even sure when it came out. I know it's Jim Carrey and somebody else, but
Ewan McGregor.
oh, what? Okay, cool. Yeah, I remember the trailer very like foggily. Like I know Jim Carrey's in it. That's it. So like I'm excited to see it. I haven't seen it.
Yep, and it's based on a true story, too.
Oh,
Which
is
really
it?
interesting.
Are they in prison? I vaguely remember it starting in a prison or being in a prison at one point in the trailer.
Yeah, I don't want to give it away, but yes.
Okay, well, your homework for next week is to maybe go to prison and fall in love and also watch I Love You, Phillip Morris.
Yay!
Yeah, hey, Mikey, do you have a review for us to read?
Yeah.
I do.
Oh, awesome. Well, Mikey, whose review are you going to read this week?
I'm going to read Ridley 67.
That is appropriate considering this was executive produced by a Ridley.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They say, love the new podcast. I am a devout horror virgin listener, and
Aw.
I'm happy to have a new show for giggles and fun. Paige, Mikey, and the ever-tuneful Todd always lift my mood.
Is that a compliment? Hang on. Ever tuneful, Todd?
I think it's a backhanded compliment.
It sounds very negative. It sounds like they think I'm a cartoon character.
5 stars.
But they like it. Thank you so much, Ridley, for that awesome 5-star review. I appreciate it. Well, I should say we appreciate it because I'm sure Paige and Mikey do. And if you want to have Mikey read your podcast, leave us a 5-star review on Apple iTunes and Mikey will read it.
Yeah.
Yay!
So, guys, if you like this power throuple that we have here on this podcast, make sure to check out our other podcast, The Horror Virgin. And that is the only other podcast that Mikey and I are on. But Paige gets around and she is on 2 other podcasts, Black Card Rehab and Cult Podcast. So guys, definitely check out those because they're amazing. If you want to follow us on social, we are at Romancing the Pod Show
Yes.
on
Yes.
Instagram, and we are at something else on Twitter who I just have never taken the time to learn
It's just Romancing Pod Show because they have a character limit and it's show SHO like Showtime.
So guys, check that out as well. And if you want to follow us all individually, Paige is at Rampage Wesley everywhere, including TikTok, except for Twitter, where she is at Paige Wesley. Mikey is at MRandolph24, and I am at Todd J. Awesome everywhere. And guys, we got a P.O. box. So if you want to send us some love letters or whatever you might send to a P.O. box, it's actually not a P.O. box. It's like a regular street address. It's pretty awesome. It's 6688 Nolensville Road, number 108-34, Brentwood, Tennessee 37027. So send us some stuff.
Yeah.
That's going to be it for us, you guys. I'm Paige.
I'm Mikey.
And I am Todd.
And you complete us.
To completion.
Toodle pip.
Rub pesto on me.
Bye. Pesto nerds.
La 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 la.